BlizzCon is on the line as we move on into our upper finals here between both Method organizations for EU and NA. I'm Jack, and joining me for the final series of the day, we've got Sloot, Nagura, and Sours here. And as we start up, we're going to be going on to the Shrine of the Storm, which has been a pain for most every team, but somehow, Sours, Method EU has always played so consistently, and they're 14-0 in terms of series. They've never dropped one.
That's right. And so not only are they 14-0 in series, but they're 28-3 in individual dungeons, with all three of those dungeon losses happening against Method NA. Now, Method NA is 30-18 in dungeons. They have seen a lot of dungeons. They've done a lot of runs through the lower bracket. They've gone to Game 3 countless times. So the fatigue that they talk about, hopefully, shouldn't be a factor for them at all today. They don't have any of that issues here. And if they win this matchup, which they very well could, they'll secure a spot to BlizzCon, and that's pretty awesome.
It is definitely insane amount of games that they had to be playing here, and they want to be able to get into that grand finals as quickly as possible. So let's take it over to Fist on stage for the Inside Scoop.
Thanks, Jack. Method EU plays better under pressure, even better than when they're just practicing. Jinji says it's one of the things that he's most proud of with his team. They play to their strengths rather than playing fancy. Method NA say that every other team makes routes to beat Method EU, and that forces teams to go a little too aggro. Method NA are focusing on the runs that they're comfortable with. So both teams are playing to their strengths. But I want to know, whose strengths are stronger, Jack?
Well said, Fist. Thank you so much for that one. And at this point, I think we're going to have to see. I mean, it's very easy to be able to bet on Method EU, but easy to bet on any Method, Sloot.
Yeah, I mean, you are absolutely right, Jack. At this point, we're going to have to see because we have absolutely no choice but to sit and watch. So it should be really interesting between the two teams. The comfort pick certainly would be Method EU here, just statistically speaking. But Method NA, I mean, if what they say is true, they're the ones that have dropped games off of Method EU. And, if anyone can do it, it's them. They don't have the fatigue right now. We've seen some excellent routing and strats come out, and then their play has been mostly flawless in this tournament so far. So this is going to be a pretty titanic series coming up.
Yeah, at this point, the loser of this series will then have to play a couple games back-to-back. Abra, for example, is going to be having to do 3 series back-to-back if they keep on winning on this one, Sours.
And what's awesome about this series is if we go to Game 3, we go to Tol Dagor. And now Tol Dagor is a dungeon that, for Method NA versus the Method EU matchup in the past, arguably that's the reason why Method NA hasn't beaten Method EU and haven't taken a series off of them. So if they can go to the third game here, then I think that's their chance to prove that they have what it takes, to redeem themselves against Method EU.
But Tol Dagor is actually a map that both of those teams already played in this tournament, and Method EU was faster by 1 minute. So Method NA, but they had time, right? They had time to watch the Method EU strategy. Maybe they adjusted their strategy to be faster. Maybe they copied some of their things. That's definitely something Method NA said to us, that they're actually going to watch the other teams and maybe adjust slight bits to their own strategy to make it faster.
But, there is a bit of kind of RNG and variance involved in the dungeon. Did they get the AP buff? Did they not? There's just so much. But first, we have to get to that Tol Dagor to even get there in the first place.
That's right. And Method EU with a dominant 86% in poll results as we start up our first game in the series on the Motherlode.
The Motherlode coming up here right now between the two teams yet again, as we've seen a bunch of them struggle before, but we're actually not in the Motherlode, Jack. You have debated us. We are in the Shrine of the Storm right now, and now immediately running down the stairs as we see teams typically do mass pull coming in here, and they will try to group up and snap all of these casters together on top of these Brazier. Excellent done here by Method EU. Bloodlust has been popped here from both sides. Exactly mirror strategy starting out for both.
Yeah, we've actually seen this exact same thing from Team D before and from 40K, and both those teams pulled this strategy off perfectly. Now we see Method EU and Method NA both tanks just kiting backwards. We see now and Nerf just going back up the stairs to make sure the casters are outranging them, so they have to follow them so they don't actually keep casting all the time, because these water blasts just do so much damage, and at some point you run out of interrupts.
You're going to run out of interest, but you can see both tanks, what they do is they dip in bit by bit once in a while. By doing so, they actually get the mobs to recast again, and before that Water Blast cast finishes, they back off, and the mob cancels its cast because their current target is out of range. A lot of bursting damage coming in here for Method EU. No problem for Zaylia, though. Group nice and healthy, back above 70%. Method NA already done here as they mass stealth yet again downwards, getting ready. Actually, I thought they were going to go to the boss, but they're grabbing a couple more. They're actually in combat with a critter on the side. Okay, so they decide to off a critter and make sure that doesn't bother them later. Method EU looking like they're trying to proc their first reaping pull upstairs here with the casters, Nagura.
Yeah, interesting strategy here for Method EU. They're actually doing two different kind of pulls here. They did not get 15% from the first pull like Method NA did. They only got 13, and now they're doing a second pull where they don't not only pull the Spiritualist from the top, but they also pull some more trash from the bottom. Now, what this will make happen for them is later on they can do some trash, or they can skip some trash that Method NA has to play later on. So we'll see how the strategy turns out for Method EU later on, but Method NA already procced their 20% Reaping Wave. They did shed them out as much as possible off, and the rest of the mobs are getting dragged on top of this first boss here.
Yoda dipping to 5% here for Method NA as they get started with that first Reaping Wave on Accuseer, arguably the best designed dungeon boss in the entirety of the BFA dungeons. Accuseer are now down to 90% as Method EU rushes down into action and gets ready to Shadow Meld off, I believe, the entirety of the Reaping Wave as well, so they don't want to deal with that on top of the boss, but Method NA looking really strong here already.
Yeah, so Method EU did get the Reaping Wave on top, and then they walked down, and now they have this additional trash that Method NA already killed or is killing right now while they're fighting the first boss, and now Method EU will pull it on top of the boss as well. Now, both of those teams used the Boralus earlier, so this kind of pull where they pull the trash on top of the boss is very dangerous, and we've seen 40k struggle to this exact same thing earlier, where we saw the tank go down, and then the Battle Rest came back up, but some a damage dealer died while this whole thing was happening, so definitely a very difficult pull because there's just so many casters, so much damage on the tank, and then of course it's 45 too, so if there's any cast going through, it's just so much damage.
This is super duper scary indeed for both sides. I mean, even those Mending Rapids getting off, I mean, you're just a huge amount of trouble. Everything just gets healed up immensely, so every single kick has to be absolutely on point, every defensive play for not only the tanks, but the melee included as well. Method EU down to 73% on Accuseer here, as Method NA has already transitioned into the transition phase itself, where the three Aqualinks have split into the equilateral triangle across the circular platform, making sure that they cast the exact same abilities as the boss. Surge Rush is of course the most dangerous ability. Team does very well to avoid it and not get knocked off the platform Nagura style here.
Wow, I've never fallen off this platform before in my life. So Method NA actually are in the second phase already. Actually, no, they have to kill the last Aqualink to get into the second phase, while Method EU is still in the first phase. So Method EU slightly behind when it comes to boss HP, but if you look at the trash percentage, they are ahead in trash, and they also still have more apprentices that they're fighting currently. So once those will go down, they will be quite significantly ahead in trash percentage. So that's the difference in boss HP that you can see between those two teams here.
Yeah, certainly Method NA will have to make up some of this percentage elsewhere, but they as well have some initiatives that they've down here, getting that 30%, and Accuseer now down in the single digits of percent, 8% left to go there. Method EU chewing through the rest of these Aqualings, making sure to dodge the Surging Rush, and a most fortunate rush there. They actually have them within cleave range, the remaining two of each other, so nice efficiency there for Method EU, and a bit of luck on their side as well, as Method NA has finished the boss first, understandably so, because they have done a bit less of the trash and are skipping past the Heldis, of course, the mini boss.
Yeah, so Method NA, since they only have 29% trash at this point, they will have to do all of the trash here that is available to them in this area before the mini boss. And once they kill all of this pull off that they have gathered here, then they will proc their 40% Reaping Wave, and they can do the Shadow Meld skip. But we actually saw them all drop very low because of the bursting. So you definitely want to be very careful when it comes to bursting, especially in Shrine, because Shrine has a lot of low HP mobs that apply bursting to you. So you want to be careful to not roll the bursting and not make the job of the healer very difficult.
Yeah, it's going to be quite scary as well before the second boss, the council boss, where there's about 20 of those initiates too, so they're going to have to very well control the bursting there. Now, Volcanic in this dungeon, really a non-factor, but you can get clipped by it if you're not paying attention or in a tight camera spot like this hallway. Excellent view from the observers here from the top of the hallway, so we can see all of the action and understand exactly how the players are moving and where they are moving to. Method EU about to proc their second Reaping Wave in just a moment. I expect by doing so, they will actually run and use it to skip the bridge as well and do the coveted but very dangerous skip. Quite the chokehold and bottleneck on some team strategies. Here they go. Now runs in and pulls the elemental to the side. Defensive Ring of Peace goes down to make sure that the mobs on either side cannot get in. Now immediately leaps in. Everybody Shadow Melds off. A perfect skip from the team right now as they hide in the corner.
Yeah, so Method U actually caught up quite a bit here because they didn't have to do as much trash on this pull as Method NA because they just had more percentage from the pulls earlier. So Method U were faster with the 40% Reaping Wave proc. They walked through, they pulled the whole area here with all the apprentices. And now this is actually a very difficult pull because there's lots of cast that needs to be interrupted. There's lots of tank damage, as you can see now, drop very low here. And then there's also those tornadoes that you can see spawn that do so much damage if you get hit by them.
Yeah, the Tempests are certainly very dangerous, and you have a really limited amount of kicks here. You have 4 kicks across the group. Of course, Zayla can't contribute to that. He's already busy healing. You have some form of crowd control, of course. Shockwaves, leg sweeps. You see one go down on Method EU side right there as they finish up the rest of the trash, well controlling their bursting stacks here. A 6 stack, but should be no problem for Zayla to heal up the rest of that as they prepare to pull this mass amount of initiates, probably bit by bit, but they don't actually. They have debated me, and they're indeed mass stealthing right up to Galecaller Faye and, of course, Brother Ironhull.
Yeah, this is exactly what I've been talking about earlier when we saw the other shrine being played by 40k and Team D, that this is what Method U does whenever there's a bursting affix, is they just use their shroud, get just shroud past initiates, because the initiates, yeah, they give count and they have low HP, but when it's bursting, you can't pull them all and kill them at the same time. You have to kill them one by one, or you have to stop DPS and wait until the bursting disappeared and then keep going. So it's just very inefficient to pull them. So Method U just chooses to have the shroud, go past them and just pull something else later on, and I really like the strategy out of both of those teams here.
Yeah, completely mirrored play here from both sides, from both EU and NA counterpart alike, pulling 8 of those initiates on top of the boss here. Brother Ironhull 77% and Galecaller Faye 40% for Method EU. They're trying as best as they can to constantly stay in the swiftness rune from Galecaller Faye. That increases movement speed, but haste as well by 25% increase, which just gives a tremendous DPS boost, as you can see, on purpose letting some of these slicing blasts go through so that they don't spawn too many tornadoes on the platform. Once Galecaller Faye, we do know, is buffed, and you interrupt her with that buff up, she will spawn tornadoes around the platform, so it should be no problem for them. They can dip into the rune from Brother Ironhull and get rid of that debuff.
Yeah, so the only difference between those two teams right now is the 1% trash difference. Method NA 54%, while Method U is on 55%. So this might not look like a lot of difference, but it might mean a lot later, because if you have to pull a whole extra pack or you have to do one extra mob, it's going to cost you a lot of time. It depends what Method NA has to pull to make up for this missing percentage here. But both of those teams, once Galecaller Faye is dead, like it is soon for both teams, then they can pull one extra Enforcer on top, which we've seen from other teams before, where the healer just runs off, pulls the patrolling Enforcer, and just kills it with Brother Ironhull, because it doesn't really do anything anymore.
We actually see some apprentices pulled here from Method NA as well, the ones that patrol up the bridge, and they're also pulling some initiates extra on top of it, so that should answer your question, Nagura, of where they're getting the extra trash percent. Scary indeed, but once Brother Ironhull is the only one alive, the boss really isn't too dangerous.
Bursting.
They just have to be careful of the bursting. There should be a 4 stack immediately from the initiates, which should fall off, and then easily they can deal with the rest of the pull here.
Yeah, it's 16.
I was talking about Method
okay.
NA on this side. Method EU deals well with their stacks and downs the rest of the initiates as well. 57% on the board for Method EU. Here comes the rest of the pull for Method NA right now. Nerf Clap taking a fair bit of damage, and they're going to deal with their round of big bursting.
Okay, so once they get the bursting, they need to make it into the zone very quickly, as you can see Nerf just leaping into there, because without this zone, they're definitely going to die if they don't have an immunity. So anyone who's not a rogue will die to those stacks. So very well done by both those teams, making use of the boss mechanic. Yoda actually proccing his cheat death here, but thankfully he is a rogue and he did not die. Nerf Club also dropping very low. They have to be careful here once they finish off this this boss fight here. But they've managed to survive, everyone. Now Method EU proc to 60% Reaping, and Method NA still has to deal with this last Enforcer because it got pulled a little bit late.
Yeah, they're doing quite mirror strategies here, but indeed the Enforcer is taking just way too long for Method NA to go down. Finally it does so. They pop their swiftness potions, and they're going to hurry along to the bridge as quickly as possible, shadow melding not only all the trash they pull on the way, but of course the 3rd round of Reaping as well. Nerf Clap getting that intimidating shout at the very end there, making sure none of the mobs follow them. There's the shadow meld that we were expecting as they mount up and get ready for the bridge. Pretty substantial pull coming in here for Method EU as well. One Tormented Soul leaked on the side there. Should be no big deal for them, as somebody will hopefully get an interrupt on it soon so that they could bring it into the pack and effectively cleave it down. Mental assaults going off left and right as the group makes sure not to get hit by that 5-second stun frontal.
Yeah, Method U actually pulled one of the bridge packs on top of the tentacles, and it's just it was very efficient by them. They just got to 60% right after the boss was dying. So they just mounted up. They did just skip straight away with the Shadow Melt. And we actually have one death on Method and A side because Yoda just did not have the cheat death available anymore because it procced in the boss fight before. So there's one death. Is actually, I mean, they do have a battle rest to get him back up, but this match is so close between those two teams. So the 5 seconds might actually matter.
Yeah, it will matter a lot between them right now. Nerf Clap getting a ton of damage and Rip Mind's going off, decreasing his max HP by 10% as well, including a huge amount of shadow damage as well. JB taking a huge hit as well. Nerf Clap has dipped and lost his trinket. JB goes down and Nerf Clap follows suit. They're trying to finish off the rest of the trash without the tank and healer alive, but Shakib cannot hang on long enough. Yoda goes down. Shakib has procced his cheat death, and it looks like it's going to be a full team wipe here for Method and A. Absolutely disastrous. They don't have their checkpoint available either, so they will have to start from the beginning of the dungeon and get back up, while Method EU has already finished the bridge trash and is going on to the next room, proccing the RP on the third boss, Lord Stormsong.
This is such a disaster for Method and A. We've talked about this over and over and over. Shrine is one dungeon where you just cannot make a mistake like that. If you have a team wipe coming in, if you have your healer down and no rest available, then you need to have your whole team released. You have to re-kill all this reaping that you skip, because there's not a single reaping wave that the teams actually kill. They all skip them with Shadow Melt. So all those reaping waves that the Shadow Melt, they have to re-kill them just because this is going to take them so long to come back. Method EU, it's all eyes on them at this point. They have 81% trash. They are in Lord Stormsong, so the only thing left between them and winning this first map is going to be the 2 bosses and the trash percentage that they're going to get in the last boss room.
Yeah, I mean, there's frankly no way Method and A is catching up short of a wipe on Method EU. And even if Method EU wipes after Lord Stormsong, once Lord Stormsong dies, and there's no way they're going to wipe on it, it's a fortified boss right now, it will get the checkpoint at that point, so they're not going to be warped all the way to the beginning of the dungeon and have the issue that Nagura mentioned of needing to deal with all the backlogged trash from the reaping. Lighty goes down again on Method and A, and this is just absolutely disastrous from them. They're trying to claw back up right now, but aren't able to do so. Azalea actually dips quite low from one of the rip mines from Lord Stormsong, but manages to stabilize and dispel himself, getting as much damage in and just letting his healing over time get him back to max HP.
It actually could have been a disaster for Method EU too, because again, if Salia dies, they cannot rest him. There's no battle rest available to them because Druid, of course, the only class in their composition that can use that battle rest. So Salia definitely needs to be careful to not go down here. We all know Salia is one of those players who wants to min-max DPS as much as possible, but of course, if he just stays alive, they're gonna win. And if they don't have any wipes anymore, no matter how fast they are going to win. But that's something they don't know. They don't know that Method and A wiped, right? So they're just going to play as always. They're not going to adapt anything. And it's also something they told us, that even when they were playing on online tournaments, when they had the ability to watch other teams play, they wouldn't do so. They would not adjust their strategies depending if they were ahead or behind. They would just always play their strategy no matter what.
Yeah, Method EU is just always playing their own game. They don't care what anybody else is doing. They just want to make sure they're doing it best. They actually jump in the water there a bit too early. Lord Stormsong's water is actually incredibly dangerous, dealing a huge amount of damage. Zaylee, unfortunately, embarrassingly so, getting hit by one of the jellyfish that stuns you for 8 seconds. No immunity will get you out of that. So a bit of time lost there, but fortunately makes up for it by the fact that he has that horribly ugly aquatic form for the Druid, and he still gets ahead of the group there too. But what I was mentioning is that the water is actually quite dangerous. You need to wait a few seconds after you kill Lord Stormsong to go in the water, else you will pulse a lot of damage, which just completely unnecessarily procced Fragnance's cheat death there.
Yeah, so no cheat death available for Franklin. We see now actually pull some of those mobs. I'm not sure if it was intentional, because Salia actually did use the stealth to make sure he goes past there. But now that's an aggro from those eels. And as we talked about this earlier, those eels actually do not proc bursting. So bursting is not going to be a big deal here. They're still fortified though, and the debuff that they apply to the tank, the stacking bleed debuff, does do a lot of damage. So you definitely want to be careful with those eels as well.
Yeah, should be no big eel for them indeed, as Method EU rears up and grabs the last boss, Volzith the Whisperer here. Now, we know the common strat here, of course. Just go through the motions really quickly. They will get to the phase transition where they will abuse the healer, the mass healer damage buff, 90% increased damage for the rest of the fight by leaving the boss in the transition state casting as they go and clean up most of the rest of the trash in the room before returning and popping Bloodlust on the boss to finish it in one phase.
Yeah, that's why all of those teams are saving their Bloodlust, right? I think teams just do not have enough damage to pull this damage up without the Boralus, or it's just too risky. Because if you do get the second transition phase, if you don't have enough damage, you just lose way too much time. So teams are just saving their Bloodlust, and you can see they are in the transition phase right now. The damage dealers, of course, are in a different realm than the healer and the tank, and you have to deal with different kind of mobs, but it really should not be a problem for those kind of teams. Actually, there we go. Maris actually going down. I think he got hit by a tentacle, because if it was a cast going through, then everyone else would have died too. So probably getting hit by a tentacle. They do have one battle rush to get him back up, though.
Yeah, but, we did talk earlier to Mirrors, and he's actually a huge fan of the Ayaya meme, so it makes sense that he would get hit by the tentacle. It's just in his desire to do so. He's certainly just doing it for show and not an accident by any means. Method EU here, 88% on the board, and Method NA is still trying to figure out right now exactly how they're going to get past all of the trash and third reaping wave that they skipped earlier. Not all of them are near the bridge yet. JB finally across the bridge, and they are getting ready again with 9 deaths on the board. But Method EU about to finish off the 3 pull of trash right in front of Volzith and getting ready to pop their Bloodlust in just a moment.
Yeah, I think at this point Method NA just has to focus on the next game, really, because there's no way they're gonna come back. Even if Method EU wipes at this point, there's no way. Method EU has to wipe multiple times even for Method NA to have a chance at all. And I think since our host and our analyst just got back to the desk, they also saw that the game is about to be over. So maybe they're just like, you know what, guys, let's focus on the next game. As Method EU is about to down the boss and only have to do 7% trash left to do.
That's actually not true. I told them there was free pizza here, so they came rushing over right now to the disappointment that there is indeed no food at the desk. Volzith the Whisperer, 15% for Method EU right now with 4 seconds left on their Bloodlust. Easily one phaseable, making sure none of those manifestations reach the boss. After this, they will just mass pull the remainder of the eels on the side and get their 100%. They waste no time doing so as they parade in on top of the group.
So they actually managed to keep the debuff on Sally. As you can see, the damage debuff is still on Sally there because they did not drop combat. So very well done by Method EU to not finish, to pull the mobs, the eels, while they were still in boss combat, to just keep this extra damage buff on Sally. As you can see, him doing 100k DPS here.
And the cheers come in for Method EU right now with a hugely dominant performance on the first map. Method NA is definitely going to have to regroup to try and take this to a Game 3.
Very powerful performance here by Method EU to take Game 1 on Shrine of the Storm, and even popped into bear form. Did you see that,
yeah.
To be able to get a couple of thrashes in?
Yeah.
That was so good. Zalia's continue to be able to impress throughout this tournament. I'm always amazed by how much damage he's able to deal while making sure he's stabilizing the group. And not only is it a testament to his own skill, but the rest of the team as well, Sour. It's avoiding unnecessary damage and using cooldowns properly.
Oh yeah, the whole team played perfectly, besides that one death near the very end of the dungeon, but that's okay. They did phenomenal this dungeon. That was a blisteringly fast Shrine of the Storm. And this also means that Method EU is one game closer to securing that BlizzCon qualification. The gameplay from them was perfect. The gameplay from Method NA, however, a little bit less than perfect, unfortunately. Method NA looked like they were ahead on the first boss. They were off to a fantastic start in this dungeon. However, Method EU was right on their heels, and they actually managed to end up downing the second boss just a touch faster than Method NA. So both teams neck and neck all the way up until this point, but not for much longer, unfortunately. But even Method EU, no, it's okay, we're fine. Even Method EU isn't perfect, okay, guys? See, Zalia here is swimming, all right, and then he gets stung by the jellyfish. So, these guys are making mistakes, right?
Zalia?
I know. So we were talking so good about Zalia, but, he was a little stunned as well.
To Zalia.
Yeah, but Method EU able to secure. And look at this damage by Zalia at the end of the last boss. So he tops the meter at the very last second. He's got that debuff, does big damn. Well played by Method EU.
Yeah, and I love big damage as well, and it's always a very fun thing as a healer. And he actually ended up averaging 17k DPS overall throughout the entirety of the dungeon, so he was having a whole lot of fun with that damage buff, Negura.
That's a lot of damage. 17k overall, that's definitely a lot. I think approximately 10k is normal, but 70k, that's a lot of damage. Of course, he was cheating a little bit with the buff at the very end, but min-maxing definitely is something that Zalia is really good at, and just impressive. This whole team just doing such a good job, even here on the stage, not showing any nerves, just continuing their good play from the caps and having those good strategies, constantly improving. So just very well played by them.
They're coming out fresh and showing what a hard day's practice will be able to get you. So we'll be throwing it to a quick break before we move on into Game 2. Don't go anywhere. The MDI will return right after this break. Welcome back to the MDI's Spring Finals. Now, if you'd like to support WoW Esports, be sure to check out the Horde and Alliance fireworks or the Transmorpher Beacon toys on sale in the description below, as proceeds will go towards the prize pool at the end of the year for BlizzCon. And now, talking about BlizzCon, one of two spots is going to be secured today at the end of this series, Nagura. Whoever's going to be able to win this is going to be securing that spot and the spot at the Grand Finals tomorrow. So as we move on into Motherlode, we actually are going to Motherlode this time, I hope. What are we thinking about? What are we thinking about both teams going into this? It seems like Method and A's just got to be able to go through their usual shake off and go into this fresh as possible.
There's just so much on the line for those two teams. Not only the BlizzCon spot, which is of course very, very important for them, but also the rest of the tournament, right? If you lose this match, if you lose the map, then the next time, tomorrow, you have to play 3 games potentially, while the winning team only has to play 1 game. So it's a huge difference for practice as well. So this game is so important for Method and A. They cannot lose this one as well.
Cannot lose this one. It's all going to be on the line as we go into Game 2 between EU and NA's Method Orgs on the Motherlode.
Well, hopefully they were able to kind of shake off those the mental drought that they had on that last map. Method and A is really going to need to bring it here if they want to stay alive in that upper bracket. Method EU, Method and A busting out right away, getting ready for the big pull across. You can already see Yoda on the distance on Method and A's side, grabbing tricks of the trade.
So thankfully, when we talked to Method and A, they actually said Motherlode is one of their best dungeons. Now the problem with Motherlode, they said, is that there's still some RNG involved and things can happen in this dungeon, but it's still one of their best maps, and they already showed that they can do really well as they played this map already. They only had 1 or 2 deaths at the very start on this very first pull. I think it was Shakib and Yoda Shakib and Lighty that died at the very start here, but other than that, they had a very clean run and a very fast run. So we'll see what they do this time around.
We will indeed. And Motherlode is a dungeon we've seen twice already today in some of the previous series. So we know just the dangers of this trash, and especially when it hits that raging, not to mention necrotic on the tank. There's just so much splash damage on the group, not to mention huge amounts of tank damage coming in. So trash, very front load in this dungeon, 80% or so if it will be done and pulled into that first boss, and it can be extremely, extremely volatile.
Yeah, one more thing to note though is that Method U, of course, was able to watch Method NA play this Motherlode yesterday already. So in case Method U's strategy was actually slower than Method NA's, they could be like, oh, you know what, guys? We have to change something. We have to be faster. We have to beat Method NA. They have a very fast strategy, so we need to change something. And they had yesterday, or half of the day yesterday, and today to practice for this exact matchup. So I think both of those teams are going to show some very risky and some very big strategies here.
Big strategies and big pulls here out of Method EU as they combine their first Reaping Wave with a huge pull. Peacekeepers coming in left and right as well. Now, I did see a double mech jockey on the side there. I'm not sure if they used both of them into one Peacekeeper or if they meant to separate them in the first place, but nonetheless, huge amounts of damage coming in for Method EU as now starts to back off and get rid of those necrotic stacks. Already at 25%, meaning he's 50% unhealable. Yoda getting a charge in and dipping low, but no proc there for that cheat death as Nerf Clap accruing not only the necrotic stacks, but a bunch of the reaping ones too, getting the dispel from JB as they chisel down the rest of their first reaping wave and the thugs as well.
Yeah, the necrotic is actually a big problem, as you can see now, actually dropping very low here as well. Mira's getting charged, now having so many necrotic stacks and very hard to heal, as he just now managed to get away from the mobs, starting to kite now and dropping the necrotic too. But Shakib actually going down for Method and A as he got charged by the thug. He was probably raging from his own raging ability, plus raging from the affix too, and just did so much damage. He basically got one-shot by the spot here.
Now Heroic leaping out, making sure that he doesn't chunk down and proc his trinket. And, you know, I actually caught up with Shakib yesterday, and he was beating himself up over the fact that he died twice in this dungeon yesterday via a charge from the thug into a Shadow Smash. So once again, just so unlucky, gets charged by the thug and gets killed. They did not use the battle res there, though, so he's back up on his feet right now, and both battle reses are available for the teams, as now Trinket actually has proc. Not going to have that available again for 6 minutes on Method EU's side, combining their second round of Reaping with another mass trash pull, making sure to get interrupts on those ice spritzers.
Yeah, you just have to be so careful, and it's the job of the healer, of the Raster Druids, to make sure that they use their Soothe, their Raging Dispel on the right targets, because those thugs needs to be dispelled constantly, but we also have Raging, right? So you need to make sure that you're also dispelling jockeys if there's any, because they do so much single target damage to people. You also need to dispel Assassins, for example, to remove the tank damage. And we see Nerf just drop so low, but he did manage to get rid of the necrotic stacks, and Yoda also dropped pretty low, but he did manage to to get healed back up. And you can see those charges
JB
coming
charge.
in on JB. You need to dispel those attacks as much as possible.
Yeah, JB certainly quite stressed here with the amount of chunking damage going on in the group. Now, Nerf Clap, I don't believe, has actually procced his Trinket, nor does Yoda have a proc on that Chi Death. We'll see exactly as those party frames update out of combat. Sometimes they do update just a bit slow, but Method EU here trying to finish off the rest of the trash to proc their 6th Reaping Wave. So it seems that what Method EU's strategy here is to basically pull enough trash to spawn their next Reaping Wave, grab that Reaping, and pull once again the next round of trash, which will then spawn the subsequent Reaping. So they just have a very good ebb and flow going on here, about to hit 60% and proc their 3rd Reaping. They're a fair bit ahead of Method NA right now.
Yeah, and one more thing to note that we didn't really talk about earlier is the Bloodlust usage. So Method EU actually used their Bloodlust on the very first pull, while Method NA is saving their Bloodlust. Now, we've seen this before by Method NA. They were actually saving it for approximately 8 minutes into the dungeon, where they would pull the boss and use the Bloodlust there for the DK damage to get more single target damage, and of course it's a tyrannical dungeon as well. But Method EU kind of had this similar strategy, if I remember correctly, from the cups, where they wouldn't use their Bloodlust straight away and save it for the boss. But now they changed up their strategy and actually used it at the start of the dungeon.
Used it indeed, and Method NA actually having a nice little catch-up here with huge amounts of damage coming out of not only Shakib, of course, but just crazy damage coming out of Nerf Clap, the Prot Warrior tank on Method NA, to try and get a bit of Claw of Hope near Method EU, who has proc their 3rd Reaping, and once again, typically has combined it with probably just enough trash to proc their 4th Reaping Wave, which we expect for them to grab into the coin-operated Crowd Pummeler, the first boss of the dungeon. One more Peacekeeper joins the fray just around the corner of the house there for Method EU, as Method NA is 55% trash on the board and will soon be procking their 3rd round of Reaping. But as you mentioned, Agura, that Bloodlust could be a turning factor for the teams later on.
Definitely. It will totally depend when exactly they choose to use it. We see Sally actually going down for Method EU. They do have a battle rest because they do have a DK in the team, so they did manage to get him back up. But this could have been a disaster if they would have played their usual setup, which is double Rogue Monk. Then there was no battle rest available, but thankfully they do have the DK rest to get Salia back up. So now they have no more battle rests available to them. So if anything else happens, they need to either run back or do something else. And at this point, once this Peacekeeper is down, they will proc their 80% Reaping Wave already, and they're most likely going to pull the Reaping Wave into the boss.
Yeah, as long as Zalia is healthy on mana, which he is right now, about 80% mana for him right now, getting a couple regrowths out as that last Peacekeeper dies. They'll have just a moment to get out of combat should he need to drink, but he doesn't care. They get right in there and get as much damage in on the Pummeler as they can, as Method NA 69% on trash, looking to proc their 4th Reaping Wave as well. They still have the Peacekeeper, the triple pack, of course, in front of the boss too, but Method EU doesn't care. They get ready with the 4th Reaping Wave here and are getting ready to pop their cooldowns on the coin-operated Crowd Pummeler that has a 150% increased damage taken from those foot bombs.
Yeah, it's just if you look at the final time currently, it's 7 minutes into the dungeon and they're already on 83% trash and they're pulling the boss right now. So incredible time by Method EU. Method NA, on the other hand, as I remember correctly, they did pull the boss at around 8 minutes the last time they played this dungeon. So they're normal in their schedule when it comes to timing. But Method EU just doing the trash at the start so much faster compared to Method NA, just doing such a good job. But again, they're out of battle rest, so any sort of mistake that Method EU is going to do right now, and we have seen them make mistakes before in Motherlode,
yes, the minefield.
it's going to cost them a lot without any battle rests available to them.
Yes, the minefield of destiny for Zalia during, I believe, Week 2 Cup was quite unfortunate, but Method EU here sitting pretty on 83%, 83% trash, 43% now on the coin-operated Crowd Pummeler, the first boss of the dungeon, as Method NA is now at 86% trash, slightly ahead of Method EU, and has pulled the first boss with their 4th Reaping Wave as well. Hopefully we're going to see that Bloodlust come out of them. There it is, just as I say that, it lights up on the screen on the right side there, and they're going to try to catch up here. This is where they need to try and turn it around and counter Method EU's Bloodlust at the beginning of the dungeon, which was quite efficient in my opinion.
Yeah, this Boralus might actually just boost them on buff DPS by quite a lot because of this DK, right? You have the Reaping Wave boosting the single target damage of the DK, and then you also have the Bloodlust on top of that. So we can see Shaki just doing an insane amount of damage. Of course, this damage is not single target only. It's, of course, damage to the Reaping Wave as well. Unfortunately, we can't really see how much damage he did on the buff, but I can guarantee you he did a lot of damage. And Method E, on the other hand, is on 30% on the first boss here. Afterwards, they're most likely going to do a big pull, and we've seen teams struggle to just trash pack right after this boss because there's so much damage on the tank. And if you don't interrupt all the casts, it's going to be even more damage. So definitely going to keep an eye on Method Use pull here.
Yeah, those Rock Lancers are very, very spicy. And now does, I believe, have his trinket back right now. We're at almost in the 9-minute mark, and he procced it pretty early on. I don't see the debuff present on his player frame, but there goes Gingy getting ready with his Tricks of the Trade and getting a sap on that Earthshaper in the back, not wanting to have too many of those Rock Lances go out, as now gets in and pulls, already rocketing up in count for the necrotic stack, so he'll have to kind of dip out of there soon enough. They're starting to get their CC chain ready as well.
Yeah, we saw the stun come out of Mirrors already, and now still has 45 stacks. Even with the stun, just so many stacks applying to now immediately if you do such a big pull. But now it's kiting now, so he's away. Hopefully the mobs die soon, because if they don't die soon, some random damage dealer is going to die. You can see Fragnance is already off because he knows he has aggro, so he's the one kiting now. This is actually very well done by them because they know now has to kite, and once now is not generating any aggro anymore, it's going to be Fragnance who has aggro. So he went with now as well and just outranged him as well, so no one died. Very well done by them, popping their shroud now and getting up to the next boss.
Yeah, they get up to the next boss, and not just that, but they will Shadow Meld there to get rid of that last Earthshaper that was sapped on the side from Gingy, not wanting to deal with that at all. The remaining 3% will likely come from the Earth Ragers on the path up here, and they'll only pull that towards the end of Azeroth. Now, we know this boss is very difficult in terms of front-loaded damage with these Earth Ragers. We saw it earlier, just how dangerous they can be with a couple of deaths on the buff ward team. They have 13 seconds left on their Bloodlust, so we'll have to see if they want to commit it here, as Method NA has finally downed the first boss and will be doing their own large pull. Now, they had 3% trash advantage, not something too substantial, but it will allow them to not have to pull about 2 or 3 more mobs over what Method EU had to do.
Yeah, we see some more subs coming in here as well for Method NA's side because, as you said, it just has more percentage. And we'll see how they do. We can see Shakib also just popping off in damage, as you can see right now. This is the strength of the DK. This is why they can do those huge pulls. It's because those DKs have the huge burst AoE cooldowns. You can see the mobs dying so quickly, but Nerf actually dropping very low, and he does have a huge amount of bursting stacks. This is why he's kiting back, but he should be able to survive here. While Method EU is fighting Azeroth. Thankfully, Elia was fixated by 2 of the rages at the very start, and of course if your healer is fixated, it's much better on the DPS because they can just continue hitting the boss without thinking about anything, while the healer is doing all the jobs as usual.
As usual, of course. Method NA getting right up in the gully of Azeroth, getting ready to pull as well. Method NA already halfway through Azeroth, 97% trash on the board versus Method NA's 98, but it looks like a bit of disaster here as Nerf Clap actually, I believe, accidentally pulled on the side, and Lighty had to go with him. Same with Shakib. JB safely out of combat, so he will be able to res the rest of his group, but that's an extra 15 seconds worth of deaths on the board, not to mention the amount of time taken here for the res and the quick rebuff before they get started on Azeroth. So the last thing they needed when they're already a fair bit behind on Method EU was this kind of slip up, but they get started nonetheless as Method EU gets the last 1/3 of health on Azeroth, reaching that 35%.
I think the few deaths that just happened to Method NA is not actually a huge problem because they were behind either way. So something has to happen for Method EU for Method NA to win, right? So, but it's bad for their mentality because if they know it's such a close matchup, they're 1 game behind already. They don't know what's going on with Method EU. They don't have a screen to watch what Method EU is doing. They don't know if they're ahead, if they're behind. So for their mentality, this is so bad because they know now Method EU probably has a clean run. They're probably doing really well, and we just lost 3 people and we had to have a mass rest back up. So now the pressure is going to be on them even higher than before, and it might affect their mentality. Well, Method EU is already done with Azeroth and has to only kill those 2 Stone Furies to get the 100% trash.
Yeah, and they're going to skip the 5th Reaping Wave here in a moment as well. You can already see them getting ready to go near that minecart, and they're going to rush over right away. I believe they're actually just going to Shadow Meld it up here by the looks of it, and they're going to go around the side of the minefield, which of course we've seen some teams do before, rather than just go down the minecart in the middle. Headed by Zalia here. They've procced their 100%, and they're getting ready to run through the rest of this trash, and then Shadow... Oh, no, of course they didn't Shadow Meld. They have to use Shadow Meld here for this trash right in front of Rixa Flux Flame. So now goes on ahead, charges through, leaps across the platform as the rest of the party goes off to the side to make sure that they don't have any residual aggro. Method NA trying to claw back into action, 44% here on Azeroth.
Now, Method EU does have their Bloodlust available back now, but I'm pretty sure they're only going to get 1 more Bloodlust, so they can either save it for the last boss or they use it on this boss, depending on what they want to do. Now, Rixa Flux Flame is a difficult boss, specifically in the tank damage, because it does do a lot of magic damage. The other difficult mechanic is the magic debuff that the boss applies to the 2 closest players, but because of the setup that they're running with the AMS and the cloak from the rogue and also just the monk cooldowns, they can very well handle the debuff.
They can well handle it indeed now, getting chunked there. Just a bit of damage, of course, as we mentioned, with the fire can only really use that ignore pain just to help stifle some of the damage, so Zayli can sit in there in kitty form and just get as much damage as possible. We know Zayli likes to min-max and play as offensive as he can throughout the dungeon. Certainly always adds up. A lot of different abilities, including Spell Reflect, as Nagura mentioned, that can be used for those chemical burns to make sure that furthermore, not only is the boss taking increased damage, but the players are not taking too much damage, so that once again, Zayli can only dispel one and then get right back to DPS. Azrock, 6% here for Method and A, 98% on the board, and they do have one of those Stone Furies, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, they do. That is going to proc their 100% trash, and therefore the 5th Reaping, which they will run down and skip. But they are... This is a fair bit behind. I mean, you pretty much nailed it, Nagura. If Method EU doesn't wipe, then the game's pretty much done.
Yeah, I think Method EU just having such a good time here. Just their strategy so insanely fast. I think it was all about this very first trash before the first buff. The 80% trash that Method EU got was just a minute or two even faster than Method NA. It was such a good strategy that they pulled off here. I think it's even going to be a sub 20 minutes Motherlode here from Method U, which we haven't seen before from any other team. So if Method U does have a clean run, killing Rixa Flux Flame here and also killing the last boss without any more incidents, then it's just going to be an insane time by Method U, and it's going to be a 2-0 for them. But again, it's still this boss left and the last boss left for Method U. They didn't make a lot of mistakes so far, so it's unlikely, but it can happen.
Yeah, they're certainly in the zone right now, and they do have the safety net if one of the battle res is available too, with 2 different characters that could do it. So even if the healer goes down, Fragments can get him up. If somebody else goes down, Zalia or Fragments can get them up, if it's not Fragments himself. So a lot of options here just in case things start to get out of control for them. Method and A, once again, 80% on Rixa Flux Flame, so they're a good almost 75% behind, 70% now behind on the boss versus their EU counterpart, and the extra 3 deaths on the board. They certainly have their work cut out for them.
Yeah, it's so much. To be honest, it's just so much pressure for Method NA. They've played against Method U, I believe, 8 times against them in the cups, and this is the 8th time for them to play against them, and they've lost every single time the whole series. Just so devastating, so much pressure on them to win these games against their most difficult competitor here, Method U. And now, if they actually end up losing this map, then they have to play 3 maps tomorrow if they want to win the whole tournament, which is going to be so much more preparation they will have to do compared to Method EU. And it's also the BlizzCon spot on the line, as we talked about earlier. So just so much pressure on Method NA to win this whole thing. While Method EU just they're expected to win. They're there. Haven't lost a single map before, so Method EU just on the last boss here. They're comfortable. They have only 1 death so far. Very well done by Method EU here.
Well, indeed, and they commit their bloodlust here early on in phase 1 as Mogul Razling is already halfway through that first phase at 75%, while Rixa for Method and A is only still at 30%. Not to mention after that they need to mount up, do all the trash, skip up the hill, and then get started on Mogul as well. Method EU about to have their bloodlust fall off, and they will be transitioning the boss in about 15%.
Yeah, interesting that they choose to use the Boralus at the start. I think we've also seen a team before that used it on the pull instead of later in phase 2. It might have just been because of cooldowns being up, specifically DK cooldowns, which are very important for their single target damage. If they have their 10-minute army ready and other big cooldowns, then the Boralus actually boost their damage by quite a bit, while other classes might not be so affected by them, like a rogue who constantly does have cooldowns up, because we know rogues just have everything all the time. And now Razdunk is about to actually sadly getting hit by the frontal here, by the cone, but he did manage to survive. Of course, also the missile is being targeting Salia because he's the only ranged target, so he will get every single one of them.
You will indeed, and yeah, he cut it a bit close there. It took 2 ticks of that Gatling gun and dipped to 13%. But again, they do, as we mentioned, they have the safety net. Fragments can res them just in case. So they've gone over to transition here. The oil drums or oil barrels have dropped across the arena here as Amirs make sure to bait the first one over there in the corner, and they deal with the 2 Sky Scorchers that come up for them. Method NA has finally started on Mogul Razdunk. The rest of the run for Method NA has actually been like very clean. Everything's been great for them. Just that one hiccup with Shakib, and he just unluckily got charged again. But really, it was the 3 deaths on Azrak that set them back a fair ways. And in my opinion, and I think you back me up on this, just probably not the best strategy for that first Bloodlust. I think Method EU certainly had a bit more efficient use out of it, and as they start phase 2 here.
Yeah, this is also something I've been talking about earlier, right? If Method EU was watching Method NA do the Motherlode yesterday, and they were like, you know what, we're approximately a minute slower than them. Let's let's fix our strategy. We need to be faster to beat Method NA because we're gonna play them in Motherlode tomorrow. So Method EU had like a whole day to figure out a Motherlode strategy to be faster than Method NA, and they definitely figured out a strategy, as we can see here. Having a sub 20-minute Motherlode, just so incredibly fast here, very well done by Method EU. Just insane strategy and insane play efficiency coming out of Method EU here as they're about to down Mogul Razdank here with only one death in the whole dungeon.
Yeah, and one death, and it was really just an unlucky death, I believe. Azalea got charged or clipped by something early on in the trash. They had to commit their battle rest to it, but was no problem for them, and certainly didn't hiccup them at all as Mogul Razdank reaches single digits of percent here, 8% now. Azalea baits out the last homing missile, and we should maybe get one more Gatling gun here. Method NA doing what they can, and they already start cheering in the background here, I believe, as Mogul Razdank goes down to 2%. They can feel it. They don't know where the other team is, but they can feel it as Mogul Razdank goes down here, and Method EU maintains their undefeated streak, cheering in the background, and they have secured a spot for BlizzCon.
Big sigh of relief, big cheers behind us as Method EU takes the series 2-0. They will be going to BlizzCon. They will be going to our grand finals tomorrow here, and you gotta love it, especially on Azalea's birthday here, Sours.
What a fantastic birthday gift that is. You know, an invitation to BlizzCon, that means flight, hotel, accommodations, everything, and then getting to compete on the BlizzCon stage, getting guaranteed access to the BlizzCon prize pool, which is boosted by all of those toy sales of the Hornet Alliance Firework Beacon as well as the Transmorpher Beacon. I know I'd be very, very happy if I was Method EU, and they only have one series to play tomorrow as well.
They've had a very, very easy, very light day today. Well, I wouldn't say it's easy, but a very light day today. Playing one series. Now they're going to be playing one series tomorrow to see who's going to be taking their share of that $100,000 prize pool for LAN right now. Nagura, that's got to be huge for them.
It's just a huge relief for them in general. And again, they only have to play one map tomorrow. They only have to prepare. It is a best of 5 though, so it's going to be 5 maps they have to prepare. But for Method NA, they have to prepare for the best of 5 and for the matches before too. And it's going to be tough opponents for Method NA as well. It's going to be Abracadabra, I believe, or Team D that is going to be playing against them. So tough opponents that they have to prepare, not just Method EU. So tough task for Method NA to come back and get that second spot.
It is a tough task, but I think it's also been something that Method NA has a lot of experience with, and where they've consistently had to be digging themselves out of that lower bracket. It really lends to a lot of this resilience, I would say, and they've shown that backbone time and time again here, Sloot.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and I mean, they did it time and time again, 3 times, time and time again, so they did it quite well during the season, but, you know, and I already know what Sours is going to say, and I agree, you know, one of the kind of backpedals that they had was just the exhaustion and the fatigue that they had throughout the season. Well, they didn't have any today, and they certainly didn't perform as well as they did yesterday. They just didn't perform up to snuff. It wasn't their day. We know that they can play at a much higher rate, so they got to just go home, shake it off, get rid of all of the bad feelings from today's maps, and just get ready for tomorrow and do whatever practice they can, because they certainly have a long road ahead of them, longer than Method EU.
They do have a long road ahead of them before they do end up getting to that spot. Let's talk to Thist, who's on stage right now with the player now.
Thanks, Jack. Hey now, so you have become the first team to punch your ticket for BlizzCon. How does that feel?
Feels really good. We didn't really think about this going here. It was all about winning. But it kind of like hit us on the bus here. We're like, this is the game for BlizzCon. And we're like, we want this like super much. And I think it showed. I think we played super well.
Absolutely, it really did. So how did it feel to go up against your friends in North America in Method?
I mean, especially like raid with some of them as well. It's always like, quietly, the family outside of playing. You're hanging around in the hotel and stuff. But I mean, on stage, it's kind of the same as anyone. You just want to win.
Okay, so, they're friends outside, but in-game, it's not friendly anymore.
I mean, it's friendly, but it's still the same mindset as, against another team. We don't care what team it is. We play our own game, and we want to win. And, yeah.
All right. That's fair enough. So you are 15-0 in matches for this year. You've only lost 3 dungeons overall. Do you have any doubt that you're going to win this tournament?
No.
That's what I wanted to hear. Thank you very much, and back to the desk.
Thank you so much for that one, Thist. And now, a lot of confidence coming into them, and it seemed like he was a little bit surprised there, when he heard 15-0 in series. Not dungeons, series so far, and they've only dropped 3 dungeons in its entirety for the series season. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge feat, but I don't think they even, knowing these guys, Nagura, and you and I know them quite well, they don't even think about the past. They go, oh yeah, they're always thinking about the next step, always thinking about the next win. It's a huge feat that they've had over the season, but right now their crosshairs are targeted on tomorrow's big prize win.
Yeah, even after talking to them, Sours, they were saying, it wasn't so much about BlizzCon in our interview. Now they're saying it just hit them, but their mindset has always been about winning, and they really showed up in this series.
Oh yeah, something they said, right? We said it the first day, but Method EU, when we talked to them, they said, nobody beats us at our own game, and their own game in these dungeons is the best of any team out there. They always play to their best. We saw when they did Motherlode once in Cups, they had a complete fiesta, dying to mines over and over again. So I was thinking, okay, maybe this could happen again. It's a different stage. The pressure's on. It's possible that they could have a choke and then perhaps even drop a game here, but it ended up not happening. They played perfectly. One death early on doesn't end up costing them very much time at all.
It doesn't, but what ended up really costing Method NA was just a little bit of a quagmire here in the Motherlode.
Yeah, so this is a really old saying when it comes to speedrunning in dungeons, and sometimes you have to go slow to go fast. Unfortunately, Nerf did not quite get that memo. He ran too far ahead of the rest of his team and ended up breaking out of that shroud, aggroing that pack, and once that happened, they call for all the non-stealth members of the team in Lighty as well as Shakib to quickly die off so that we can res you and get back into the dungeon. And just being a little too rushed, being a little too overzealous, making a small mistake like that ends up costing the team so much time. The entirety of the mass res on the team costs a lot. They lose 15 seconds on all the deaths. They lose all the time it takes for those mobs to go in and kill them. You can't make mistakes like that, especially when it's the game that decides your fate, where they could have gone to BlizzCon if they won this, and the next one, right? So you can't be making these mistakes here.
We've seen a number of times where other teams have made some simple mistakes like that, but they're able to pull through. But when playing against Method EU, we just can't make any sort of errors possible because they'll jump on it. But now as we're taking a look at our bracket with Method EU going forward, they will be our final game tomorrow in the grand finals. But first, we'll have to see how Team D and Abracadabra face off, as the winner of that grudge match, Sloot, is going to be going up against Method NA.
Yeah, it's going to be an exciting one. And we're talking in the back. I was talking to Zyro about this, actually. And Team D, we both agree, is finally, it seems like they've gotten out of their funk. They've kind of broken the ice, so to speak, and they're good to go tomorrow. So I think that series to start off the day should be a pretty big one.
Be very big indeed. Team D and Abracadabra both kind of calling each other out, saying that they want to be able to face up against each other. And even though Team D did mention to Gura that there were a lot of fans of Dr. J, but they still want to be able to knock him out.
Yeah, I think Team D definitely showed up today a lot better than they did yesterday. So I think they warmed up a little bit. They got their stage nerves in check, so they're doing a lot better now. And Abracadabra, I talked to them today, and they really said that they didn't practice the maps that they played today against Buff Warrior and Rogue, not that much, because they were so confident in their maps today. So they practiced for tomorrow's matches already today because they were so confident. So I think it's going to be very difficult for Team D to beat Abracadabra.
I think so as well, but it'll also be a very long day for Abra going into it, because it's smart of them to be practicing for that, and it's very thankful that they did end up winning on minimal practice against Buff War Nerf Rogue, because if they do win against Team D, then they're going to have another matchup they got to play back-to-back, and they win that, they're going to be going back into the grand finals and having so many games. You're going to be spending like 6-7 hours there, Sloot, back-to-back-to-back.
Yeah, it's going to be tough, and against these competitors specifically too. They had some easier routes or roads through the lower bracket in some of the cups that we saw during the season, but Team D, Abracadabra, not teams that are going to be easy match by any means. And Team D specifically is going to be really hungry for it. They're the final representation of the East, as we mentioned earlier, so they're going to want it real bad. Not just because Abracadabra, that they seem to have a grudge against and want their revenge against as well, but they're the final representation of their entire region.